Hello, everyone. My name is Dorothy Guerrero. I head the Policy and Advocacy team of Global Justice Now, which is a UK membership and campaign organization. We have offices in London and Edinburgh, and our local groups and individual members are present in many cities here in the UK. We mobilize people in the UK for change through campaigning in solidarity with various non-government organizations and social movements to fight the causes of poverty and injustices, particularly in the global south. We work on issues linked with trade, corporate power, especially big pharmaceutical corporations, or farm campaign. We campaign for climate justice as well as on UK aid and investments in developing countries. We also work in migration. I wish to thank the organizers for inviting me to share my perspectives on women's political activism and engagement in this initiative of building partnership opportunities using new technologies fostering social and economic inclusion. I would like to focus on communicating and campaigning for system change in climate advocacy, which is part of my work in Global Justice Now. My training is on political science and development studies. For the last 3 decades, I've been doing research and political education on economic justice issues in the national, regional, and global levels. I campaigned addressing actors and institutions that affect the global political economy, like the World Trade Organization, and international financial institutions like the World Bank, and regional development banks like the Asian Development Bank. I also did some work for a while in the academe and taught students in postgraduate levels in universities in the Philippines, Germany, and Thailand. So both work, communication is a main component of sharing ideas and I think also engaging people and creating social change. I moved to the UK in 2015, and since then I've been doing full-time research, writing, and campaigning with the charity or not-for-profit sector. I've always considered myself as someone who wanted to see social change and analyze how social transformation happen. I had the privilege of working and living in a number of countries like the Netherlands, Germany, Thailand, and South Africa before coming to the UK, and those experiences enrich my work a lot. I started as a young activist in the Philippines in the last years of the Marcos dictatorship in the 1990s. I have witnessed the social upheavals and political transformation there, which is still continuing until now. You're probably aware of the tremendous economic challenges that people are facing because of poverty as well as natural disaster. People are also living under a government lacking in recognition and respect for human rights. Like in the years of the dictatorship, extrajudicial killings are once again happening in a massive scale in the Philippines. At first, the killings are focused on drug users. Many people here, whether friends or total strangers, ask me how drug addiction, which is seen here as a mental health issue, is used as a basis to end the lives of drug users instead of quitting their addiction. Sadly, some of the victims now of extrajudicial killings are journalists, especially in the rural areas or in the provinces, and activists, especially trade union organizers, farmers, and indigenous community leaders that are resisting resource and land grabbing, and those that are fighting mining and other environmentally destructive projects. That social context of growing up under martial law developed my social and climate activism. I see climate change not just as an environmental issue. For many like me who are from the developing countries and are aware of that context, we share the perspective that climate change is the result of both social and environmental crises in society. Social because climate change is a result of historic and continuing unequal relations between humans, which have a class, race, and gender components. Likewise, it is an environmental or ecological crisis because of the problematic relationships between humans and nature. An important element in the climate justice discourse also is colonial history. It is not surprising that there are reports now that the UK now emits more carbon dioxide per capita than the 18 Commonwealth countries combined. The UK is one of the highest global emitters and historical or cumulative emitters, so it is not surprising. Until 1882, more than half of the world's cumulative emissions came from the UK alone. The level of emission made the UK one of the most prosperous countries, and we are still benefiting from that history. That is why climate justice campaigners are saying that the UK should act responsibly now and lead by cutting down its emission in an appropriate level. We are also communicating that the impacts of big corporations, extractive industries from the UK that are trashing the environment in the global south should also be in the discussion. That the emissions from international trade, shipping, and aviation should be calculated too. If the CO2 emitted from producing the huge amount of stuff we are importing from the south and using here and enjoying here in the UK are included in the calculation, then the figure would be much higher. This understanding of the political economy and North-South relations are the foundation of my climate activism. When I started working for climate justice, I already have many years of working on social and economic justice issues. It is very clear to me that climate change came about because of the many wrongs in the way our society, our economy, our politics are being managed and running. Since 2007, together with many climate, environmental, and social justice activists, I started engaging and sharing my perspectives on climate change and arguing that to solve it, we need system change. We need an anti systemic social transformation to a more democratic and equitable society that is free from current exploitative and unsustainable systems. The work is also global, and therefore, we need to encourage an internationalist thinking as well among activists and campaigners, policymakers, those that are shaping public opinion, like people working as educators and those in the media. The environmental, economic, social, and political crises are interdependent, and solving each requires a holistic approach to confront all these crises of poverty, inequality, racism, and many others. These are all integrated. To face the systemic crisis, we need system change and push for systemic alternatives, which in turn requires confronting capitalism, patriarchy, anthropocentrism, inequality, and the resubordination of the South by rich industrialist countries through existing processes, including in the climate negotiation. The struggle to build and promote systemic alternatives requires deep reflections, rethinking, and dialogues among people from all walks of life, among activist organizations and social movements worldwide, as well as, as, as people that are discussing them in their households. In the workshops and public events that I organize or when I speak in a panel, my objective is to present the arguments, analysis of the current system to help in the necessary work of deconstructing ideas that are dominant, our understanding of what is development, what is progress, and how such progress is achieved. These include, first and foremost, the current understanding about development, the international trade and investment regime, and the power of transnational corporations in the everyday life. Politics and the economy are very crucial aspects of life, and people need to have the tools for critical thinking and to shape the future that we want. As a campaigner, it is crucial to create and provide the spaces to understand and analyze what exactly is the system. Who are the actors and institutions that shape that system and still shaping them? That means from the global to the local. More importantly, because the system is such, who are the losers and winners in the system? And how do we stop those who benefit to the detriment of those that are being squeezed out? Thus, political education is one of the crucial roles of campaign organizations like Global Justice Now. We help provide that understanding in order for participants and members and people that we engage with to conclude that society needs systemic change. That's the first key step. Now, the understanding of what the systemic change means is the next step. And this is where the work of reconstruction comes in. What needs changing? What are the debates in the policy circles? Why are the policy wrong or designed to fail in order for the bank accounts of those benefiting from it to continue having good sums or accumulating? Are the alternatives being presented the real solutions, or are they the wrong solutions to keep the status quo? If wrong, why are they wrong? We also need to identify the current lines of struggles which have anti-systemic potential in practice and analyze how to shift the current balance of power. Women's activism in the time of climate and other emergencies like the COVID-19 global pandemic is really challenging. The pandemic exposed the short-sightedness of our governments and their skewed priorities. In the UK, people are now seeing the impacts of decades of austerity and the push for privatization of many services in the National Health Service. So that happened through decades. The health system here, however, is much better than in the US and many developing countries that are based on the market. And it is also my organization's campaign to keep the NHS out of the US UK Free Trade Agreement. Trade is not just about facilitation of goods and services and lowering of tariffs between the goods in those trading nations. More dangerously, it is now a means for the system of the trade partner, in this case the US, to be exported to push the UK system to be the same. But all of these are also connected with climate emergency. After all, there are many studies pointing to the problem of production and consumption why the COVID-19 virus emerged. An affirming message in the commemoration of the International Women's Day this year before the pandemic was the common recognition that women, despite our diversity, have common challenges that unite our movements and collectives. If we've learned anything from the climate emergency, it's that women are the most affected globally, but their movements are also the most effective. We need a collective approach and to be organized to fight a global health crisis. We need to learn from the universality and internationalism of the feminist movements. This year's biggest International Women's Day march was seen in Chile, where more than 1 million women protested across the country for women's rights and also against state repression. Women and feminists have been on the front lines of the protests in Chile last year as well, and because also they are in the front lines of the climate justice movement. The protest forced last year's UN climate negotiation or conference parties, the COP25, to move from Chile to Spain. There were actions and events all over the world this year. Some were peaceful and some met by heavy police force. The biggest impact of COVID-19 to activism is the fact that we could no longer gather face to face as we used to discuss, exchange ideas, to learn from each other, and that we need to lessen or cancel planned mass protests now due to restrictions. At the same time, because of this, activism went online too. The need made many of us to realize the importance of online communication and to use it to bring our message to the public. It has many limits, but it does offer the advantage of reaching people beyond the circles that are normally reached. It also allowed organizations like mine to invite experts and campaigners from various countries to speak in webinars and online events. And then also that is cheaper because we don't need to pay for the plane tickets and they can be with us and join us in the discussion. However, of course, that's limited. It's different. It's different when people can exchange ideas or exchange further over a cup of coffee or over meals. To addressed the need to present an international perspective as well on the global coronavirus pandemic, I started an informational and educational interview series to present how COVID-19 is playing out in different societies, to highlight the visions and alternatives from social movements in the global south. Through the series, we hope to get a first-hand understanding of the possibilities being shaped from social activism and the progressive processes they are building. Since April, I did a 12 interview series featuring social movement leaders and public intellectuals from Bangladesh, South Korea, Ecuador, South Africa, from Kerala in India, Democratic Republic of Congo, Brazil, the Philippines, Russia, Kenya, Indonesia, and Mexico. The common and universal message from the interviews is the deep and multiple weaknesses and failures of the corporate and finance capital dominated globalized world we live in. That is an almost universal conclusion that all the speakers presented. Decades of neoliberal and austerity policies resulted to the decimation of public health systems in Kenya and Indonesia and the Philippines and the basic services in many countries like in the DRC, which made the majority vulnerable to current and future health crises and pandemics. This interview series became popular, not just because people are interested to know how the virus is impacting other countries, but also how measures from various governments contribute to the success or failure of controlling the spread of the virus, and that makes what makes societies more secure or not. For the global climate justice movement, the lockdown meant the postponement of the global mobilization around the Conference of Parties or COP26 this year. It was scheduled to be held last November in Glasgow, and it will still be held in Glasgow, albeit a year after, so next year. So to continue the organizing that we need to do, together with the UK COP26 Coalition, we held a 5-day online gathering between November 12 and 16 as a kickoff to the global mobilization. The COP26 Coalition is a civil society partnership made of various groups from a range of constituencies in Scotland and the rest of UK that are organizing for climate justice around COP26. So we have trade unions, we have environmental groups, community or formations and groups, campaigners, climate, trade, even those that deal with fashion, the fashion industry, aviation, so various campaigns and advocacies. We are using the opportunity presented by the negotiation as a moment to strengthen the UK, the Scottish and international climate justice movement to build power for system change, also beyond 2021. The online gathering was called From the Ground Up. It was participated by more than 8,000 people who joined 53 events online. That's 83 hours of webinar by Zoom. Some events attracted more than 100 attendees and some up to close to 500. Such initiative shows too that we could go beyond the limits imposed by the still ravaging or the still raging virus because people wanted to gather and exchange ideas about climate change and to build the power together. Climate change is seen as the fight of our lives. We need the global reset after the virus is controlled, and that reset should be based on systemic change, not just merely going back to normal. We have seen how normal means death to many, especially in countries where the markets control whether you see a doctor or get treatment, whether you get the next meal or not. We are seeing how governments refuse to walk away from the normal by continuing to favor big pharmaceutical companies to enjoy their patents and thus look forward to the huge profits despite the fact that public investments, like here in the UK, funded for the research and development of anti-COVID vaccines. The role of feminism and then other collectives, other organized groups in the current climate and health emergencies calls for new thinking and also new ways of organizing. It also goes beyond challenging patriarchal power in the case of the feminist movement. As a liberation struggle, it is a part of the larger task of eradicating domination in all its forms race, class, gender, sexual orientation, disability, religion, and so much more. Those who have long been thinking, writing about, and building women's movements for systemic alternatives know from practice that it will be impossible to get rid of these dominations while the system that produced them remain intact. Most organized grassroots women do not actually call themselves feminists. In Asia and Africa, they are mostly socio-economic and environmental activists. However, the thinking and discussions they produce enrich ecofeminism, which emphasizes a systemic perspective. We are facing a difficult time ahead. Our movements need to be resilient and come together to collectively fight the global emergencies we're experiencing. It will require political projects and organizing of women to challenge the power structures that continue to push inequality on us all. Women's lives will be at the center of the struggles in the future and also now, and so must our feminism be. We need the new tools in developing our thinking and in communicating as well. I hope these thoughts help and thank you for your attention. And I wish you more power and creativity in your work ahead. Thank you very much.